So I hope you had enough time to look at 2 examples. Now let's analyze them together. This is the original passage, and this is what we call the plagiarized version, the version you should not imitate at all. What is wrong? I tried to analyze the first sentence to show you what is wrong. Look at the first sentence. Okay, now look at the first sentence in the students' or the researchers' version. Do you see how similar they are together in terms of the language, the use of phrases, the use of words? This is considered a case of plagiarism. I know maybe it is unintentional, but a paraphrase that is not well done could be taken to be a case of plagiarism. The other problem with the passage is that there is no documentation, there is no citation of where the researcher has taken this idea from. That is very important. So if we answer, we go back to the question, what is wrong with this version? Very close to the original text in terms of language, and there is no documentation. So 2 big issues that make us consider the paraphrase or the passage rendered by the researcher to be plagiarized. A better version of the paraphrase is this. In research papers, students often quote excessively, failing to keep quoted material down to a desirable level. Since the problem usually originates during note-taking, it is essential to minimize the material recorded verbatim. And then we have Lester, who's the author of the article or the book, and the page numbers where this idea is found in the resource, followed by a full stop. Now, how we do this might differ from how we do the citation, might differ from one style to the other. I mentioned before the MLA style, the APA style, the Chicago School, and others. These are the 3 main major styles of research writing, and it is important for the researcher to know which style he or she is to follow, and to follow it very specifically, to follow everything up to the punctuation. A case of plagiarism is what we call self-plagiarism, and I think the word itself is indicative of the meaning. Self-plagiarism. What does that mean? You use the material you have submitted at a different course or a different stage of education, and it has been entered into the the internet material. So some would say, well, it's my work. How can I plagiarize my work? It's mine. Once you submit it for a specific course at a specific time, it has become something well known. And if you yourself want to use some of the material again, some of it again, or parts of it again, you have to treat it as one of the sources. That is to say, to quote or to paraphrase or summarize the ideas in your work, and document between 2 brackets. You put your name and you put the page numbers if it is print material. So be careful of this. Some students might find it an easy way out. They might not consider it a problem, but it is. So you are not to use work that you have submitted earlier or for a different course. A question that is usually problematic for the students, a question that my students in my courses, in the courses of research methodology and in graduation project and during my supervision of my students, I always get is that if I do not copy the text, I only take the idea and put it in my own language. Would that be considered a case of plagiarism? Think a little bit about the answer. You're right. Yes, it is a case of plagiarism because, you know, when you plagiarize, you either take the work in terms of the exact language with its content, that is to say the ideas, or you just take the ideas and put them in your own words. In both cases, if you do not document, if you do not cite the reference you have taken this idea from, it will be a case of plagiarism. So be careful. This is something very common and many students are not aware of that. They think we only plagiarize if we take the exact words of the author or the writer. No. Another case is when you take the ideas, and if it is the language of someone else or the ideas of someone else, they are both the writer's property, and you have to acknowledge the copyright. You have to acknowledge him or her when you use the ideas. So if we sum up, we say if you fail to cite quotations and borrowed ideas, cite, that is to say put between brackets, this is the most common case of citation or documentation, like what might appear like this, then you are committing a case of plagiarism. If you fail to enclose borrowed language in quotation marks, like this, again, you are plagiarizing. And if you fail to put summaries and paraphrases in your own words, then that is a case of plagiarism. And remember that bad paraphrases and bad summaries are also considered cases of plagiarism. So please be very careful. Now, we move to the point that again students ask, do we cite all the material we use? We feel that some of the material is very common. It's something basic, like for example, the date of the publication of a work. If we put it in our text, do we have to cite where we have taken the date from? No. Again, if you cite information that has become very well known for years, decades, and actually centuries, do we have to cite that? No. Again, you don't have to cite that. So let's look at what to cite and what not to cite. What to cite? All direct quotations. Any ideas borrowed from a source, whether they are paraphrases of sentences, summaries of paragraphs or chapters, statistics, little-known facts, tables, graphs, or diagrams. All these have to be cited. And again, what do we mean by cited? You acknowledge the the author of or the person who has made that material that you are using. You put, very simple, you just put the name and some information like the page number in brackets within the text, and at the end, definitely at the end of your paper or your essay or your dissertation, you will have a bibliography, or what is sometimes called the works cited list, and you will give details, and I'll show you how that will look in the coming slides. So this is what we have to cite. Now you use quotation marks for exact phrases or sentences. It doesn't have to be a full sentence. Sometimes it's a phrase that a certain person has coined or has used in a specific way. Then we have to paraphrase that word or phrase, like terminology, but in specific cases, not all terminology. To omit quotation marks is to claim that language is your own. You claim that you are doing some sort of a paraphrase or a summary. So if the paraphrase is very close to the language of the original, you will be considered a plagiarist. Omission of quotation marks is plagiarism, even if source is cited. Why? For this same reason. It means you are claiming the language is yours when it is not yours. Clear? What not to cite? Common knowledge. Information that could be found in many general sources, like very simple scientific facts. The water or let's say water boils at 100 degrees centigrade. Do I have to cite the reference for that information? No, because it has become very well known. Another thing you have to cite is the information seen repeatedly in your reading. That is to say, what's the difference between this and that? In this case, it's in your own field of specialization. Almost every reference, basic reference you look at, it mentions this information. That means it's basic and you don't have to cite it and document it because it has become well known and established in your own field. Examples of common knowledge. John Adams was the second president. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. Common knowledge you don't have to document.